Hi, it's Lauren. Welcome back to my craft room, and I'm continuing my 12 Days of Christmas series. And today I'm going to be using some scrapbook.com exclusives because I want to focus on pops of color. Now, I know you've seen pops of color here on my channel or over on Instagram and Facebook because I absolutely love these. I have a lot of them. Now that might be an understatement as I lay them all out here, but I am actually like out of room. I need more containers or maybe a different style container that I can fit all of these in because I have so many pops of colors. I think they're the best. I love that you can add sparkle to your projects. There's also a gloss, satin, and metallic. So there's 4 different kinds of pops of color, and there are lots of different ways to use them. I've done stenciling with them in the past, and of course you've seen me add them as just little, well, pops of color like their name suggests onto my cards. But a new technique that I've been doing a lot lately, if that makes sense, is to mix them with scrapbook.com's Cloud Whip, which is a mixed media modeling paste. So I just took a wide spatula that I have in my stash, put some right onto my glass mat, and I mixed in some of my pops of color. Now this is a pearl pops of color in Deep Sea because it is mixing with this matte white modeling paste. You lose a little bit of the pearl. It's more, I'm just going for the color more so here than the type of shine. And once I'm happy with the mix, I'm just going to go ahead and slap this right onto my cardstock. Now this is Nina's ultra thick cardstock. I have it on top of my grip mat, and I'm just using my magnets to help keep my grip mat in place on my glass mat. It won't move, but I get paranoid that I'm going to make a mistake. So it's just a redundancy to have my magnets there. And I went ahead and used my wide spatula from scrapbook.com and just spread it across my cardstock. Now, I was fully intending when I was making this card just to make one A2 size card, but I put a lot of Cloud Whip on my glass mat. And then when you're adding pops of color, you're adding, more mass to it. So it ended up being quite a lot. And now I am going to start with my second color. So for this one, I mixed in Ocean Waves, which is also a pearl. And I was a little better this time. I didn't quite have as much as I did with the Deep Sea, but I just, again, slapped it onto my white cardstock, used my large scraper just to spread it across the paper. And now I'm just using this smaller spatula to just help spread it along a little further and also to clean off my scraper and just really kind of blend those 2 colors together. I'm going for a messy, which is totally out of my comfort zone, but a messy mixed media look, and I'm totally fine when the colors blend together because that's what I want, but also when they end up kind of in random spots. Like some of my Deep Sea will mix in with this lighter color, which is Seafoam Pearl, and I'm okay with that. I am going for kind of an ombre look, but I like the mix of the different colors coming in. So again, just using these 3 colors, spreading it, trying to make it as thin as I can while still having a lot of texture. So there is a lot on this piece of paper, which is why I use ultra thick. It's going to take some time to dry if you're going this heavy. Now, if you really scraped it down and it was just a light coat, obviously it wouldn't take as long. So if you are going to do something like this, just know that you might have to go fold some laundry or eat a snack or watch the latest episode of whatever show you're watching and come back because it will take some time to dry. Now, before I finish this off, I did take my Snowflake glitter pops of color. So this is a clear with kind of an iridescent glitter in it. And I just kind of, you saw me just squiggled it on to this piece of paper on top of the modeling paste, and that way I could just put in a little bit of sparkle on this mixed media, and I did spread it around so it wasn't just glooped on the top, and hopefully a lot of that sparkle will shine through when you look at the card. So I've cleaned off my desk, I cleaned off all my supplies, and my paper is off to the side drying. And I'm going to jump into stamping. Now I'm using two stamp sets that are in the coming soon at the time of this recording for scrapbook.com, but when I saw them, I just had to use them. I know you can't get them yet, but they're so cute and I love the matching dies. So I will have them linked down below and you can just hit the notify me button on scrapbook.com and you'll get a nice little email, or you can also sign up for text of when it comes back in, not back in stock, when it comes into the shop, when it is in stock. So make sure you head over because they are so cute and I absolutely love that scrapbook.com. I know I say this I think every time, but that they're coming out with coordinating dies with their stamp sets. So I have my Misty here. I put my medium Clearly Amazing matte and some white cardstock, and I stamped my snowflakes with VersaMark. Now, the downside to stamping with a clear ink onto white paper is that it's kind of hard to see, and I did stamp it twice, but I didn't do a very good job at stamping. So some of my snowflakes didn't quite come out all the way, but I want you to know that's a my bad, not a stamp bad. I just didn't do enough pressure on some of my stamps. So I went ahead and embossed it in silver embossing anyway, and there are some snowflakes that didn't really come out, but that's okay because I'm going to be doing some layering and I'm going to show you that you can use those snowflakes that only half of turned out. And I'm gonna cut them out. I have my magic mat here and I'm grabbing my mint tape and I'm just matching up the different snowflakes with their dies. I'm going through and peeling off some of the little, I don't know what you call them, little wispies of paper, because again, this is an ultra thick cardstock and sometimes I get little paper wispies when I cut them with the magic mat. So just peeling those all off and using my little mini vacuum to pick those up. But the snowflakes turned out so pretty. I love silver and blue for Christmas, so I'm really excited at how they turned out and how I'm going to do my layering. So now let's move over to making our sentiments. Next, I'm pulling out some Peppermint smooth cardstock. I just grabbed the Slimline pack because I knew I had some scraps in there so I could stamp my Happy New Year sentiment. Again, I'm using VersaMark and silver embossing powder, and I'm going to use my Mini Misty this time, and I put in my smaller Clearly Amazing matte, and I'm just going to line up my Happy New Year. Sorry you can see my messy hair here, but I was doing my very best to get my sentiment nice and straight. And once I was happy with it, like I said, I'm stamping in VersaMark again, and I'm going to be doing silver embossing powder. And this time I did remember to use my embossing tool, so that way I can make sure I get a nice embossed, I was going to say image, but sentiment, a nice embossed sentiment. So stamping twice, and the nice thing is it's a darker paper, so I can see that yes, everything actually stamped really well. And I'm just going to repeat my process from earlier of adding silver embossing powder, and then I will emboss it with my heat gun. And once it's cooled down from embossing, I'm going to grab just a Swiffer dust towel and I'm going to wipe off that excess powder. So I do not have a die set for this stamp set, so hint hint scrapbook.com if they watch this video. I would love some dies for these sentiments, and I just fussy cut around it, kind of a bubble cut look. I also wanted to die cut the word celebrate because I wasn't really sure if I could get two cards out of my whole sheet of paper that I colored with the pops of color and Cloud Whip. So I thought I would have two options and we can kind of see what fits best when I'm ready to start assembling the cards. So I die cut celebrate out of some silver mixed metals cardstock, and then I die cut the word celebrate out of, again, that dark blue paper from Peppermint, and I actually remembered to put some adhesive behind my cardstock, so I was able to sandwich my three blue celebrates together. But I remembered after I already die cut one of them, so I did have to add some glue behind my blue layer. Again, that's three layers of cardstock adhered together after die cutting. And then I kind of off-centered that silver paper so it has a little bit of a drop shadow. So my paper is drying. It's still a little cool on the backside, which means the bottom layer of Cloud Whip that's like touching the paper is probably still a little wet, but it's enough on top that I can add a little bit more of my Cloud Whip. And I wanted to add some sparkle to this Cloud Whip. Now I added too much pops of color here. You can see how liquidy it is. I should have added more Cloud Whip. As you can see, it's literally dripping from my spatula onto the paper. Now the card works out fine. I'm still very happy with it, but you'll see that my little snowflakes here from the Winter Flurry stencil don't really hold their shape. I mean, you can still kind of tell it's snow, and with my snowflake stamped images and embossed images, it'll be fine, but it was just so liquidy, and you're gonna see here, I made it even worse on that side. My type A brain was like really struggling with how it turned out, but you know what? We're going to work with what we have. And I still really like well, now it's on the right side, but the left side of those first initial snowflakes. So I'm going to trim this part that I like the best down to fit onto an A2 size card. I do trim it to be an eighth of an inch shorter, both portrait and landscape, or horizontally and vertically. So there will be a tiny little white border when I cut it. I'm sorry, when I glue it. I'm watching myself cut, so I said cut. When I glue it to my card base, there will be a tiny white border because I love white borders on my cards. If you can't tell, so many of my cards, I have a little bit of that white cardstock showing. So I'm lining up my winter flurry stencil once I finally figure out where it goes. And I brought out a distress oxide and tumbled glass, and I'm just adding a little bit to my snowflakes. I don't cover them all. I don't go heavy handed in all of the areas. I'm just trying to make my snowflakes look a little more like snowflakes, and to also kind of dull out the white. I felt like the white was so bright compared to the three blues in the background. So you don't really need to do that step if you're copying this card. It's just something I did to help kind of tone down how bright white they were and to hopefully make them look a little more like snowflakes. So I do decide here to try and make two cards. So as you can see, I have that background. I layered a bunch of snowflakes and added Celebrate. And then out of the scraps that I had cut to make my A2 background, I trimmed down a few strips. So I have two 5.5 by 3/4 inch and one that is 5.5 by a 1/2 inch. And I'm just going to put them directly onto the card base. So I have a top folding A2 card base out of some ultra thick Nina white cardstock. I have all my cardstock that I use on I was gonna say daily basis, but my basic supply list, if you want to know what cardstock I'm using for my card bases, it's always in my basic supplies list. So once I have all three strips glued down, now these came from different parts of my card. They don't line up together, but I just made sure to keep the dark blue on top and the light blue on the bottom. But it just felt kind of fun and messy to not have parts of the card like match up exactly. And then I am layering in my snowflakes. Again, I have large and small dainty snowflakes, and I'm just layering them, trying not to be too, type A. I'm doing my best to be messy and mixed media like here. So one of those snowflakes that didn't have a full stamp, I'm just tucking it in so you could still see the pretty part, but you're hiding the part that didn't come out. So it totally fine that I can just tuck in the parts that I don't want to be seen because it didn't come out all the way, and then have the pretty parts that did stamp and emboss showing behind all that layer of snowflakes. So I really went heavy on the snowflakes for this card because I don't have as much background. I just did a few strips. And then I'm going to pop up my New Year sentiment. So I'm grabbing my 1/4 inch foam adhesive from scrapbook.com, and I'm trimming a piece that will fit behind my sentiment, and I'm going to attach that to the top and as centered as I possibly can on the card. I use my grid mat to help with that. And that will finish off that card. Well, I'm going to add more to it later, but as far as assembly goes. And then for the second card, I have another top folding A2 card, and I'm going to adhere down my background. I did use my Scotch tape runner for these pieces because these pieces of paper have been like tortured. I have so much mixed media on them that I wanted to make sure it was going to be secure to my card base. So for this one, because I really like this background, I don't want to cover too much of it, so I don't have as many snowflakes, but I'm just layering them and gluing them together and the top half of the card. And like I said, for the pieces that didn't come out all the way, I'm just tucking them under where you can't see them. And then for my Celebrate sentiment, I'm going to go ahead and use some wet adhesive to add behind my sentiment. I like to use I use this glue for everything, but I like to specifically use my fine tip glue pen for these like type of dainty sentiments. So gluing that again as center as I can, using my grid mat for help, and gluing that right to the top of my card. So now that my two cards are assembled, I'm going to pick up a little bit, and then I'm going to grab those same pops of color that I use for my background, and we're going to use them as adding pops of color to the card. So I'm starting with the darkest one, which again is Deep Sea, and I'm just going to add a couple on the top. So I'm creating an ombre look with my pops of color as well. So starting with Deep Sea, moving on to Ocean Waves, and then finally Sea Foam for the bottom. And then I'm also going to grab my Snowflake glitter pops of color, and I'm going to add them to my snowflake. So I kind of want a little overboard, I guess you could say, with adding in the pops of color, but today is my 12 days of Christmas and I'm talking about pops of color, so if I'm going to go overboard, today is the day, right? So I'm adding a ton of glitter to my snowflakes, and I love adding glitter this way because it's not messy. I don't have to get glitter everywhere, and it's not embedded into my carpet in the craft room, forever because I spilled glitter or something. It's just a really nice way to add in shine without having the mess. So I'm going to repeat the same thing with this card. I like having odd numbers when it comes to my pops of color. So because I have 3 colors, I think I did 7 total. So one of my colors had 3 dots compared to the other ones that only had 2. And again, I'm repeating the same process of adding that snowflake sparkle glitter pops of color to my snowflakes, and that will finish off my card. I will tap on the inside of both, and that just helps dome out your pops of color instead of it looking kind of like a Hershey Kiss. So here are the 2 New Year celebration holiday cards that I made using pops of color and a little bit of Cloud Whip. Here is a close-up, but I hope you enjoyed this inspiration using pops of color, and you can click on the link down below to check out pops of color for yourself. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll click like, and if you're new here, I hope you'll subscribe and come back. As always, you can find everything I use down below in the description box. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Bye!